Spoke 14. And what does it have in common with the 14th century? I'm looking at biblewheel.com/history/C14 underscore exile.php. The 14th letter of the Hebrew alphabet is Nun, and the 14th century was known for the fall of the Papal Supremacy. The books representing the books of the Bible representing Spoke 14 are 2nd Chronicles, Zephaniah, and Hebrews. And we see in Revelation 14, which is the 14th spoke of the inner wheel of Revelation. It says, "And there followed another angel, saying, Babylon is fallen, that great city, because she made all nations drink of the wine of the wrath of her fornication." And when we look at Isaiah 14, we see it says, "How art thou fallen, from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? How art thou cut down to the ground, which didst weaken the nations? For thou hast said in thine heart, I will ascend into heaven, I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will sit upon the mount of the congregation in the sides of the north. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will be like the Most High." So one thing in common between these two passages is the word fallen, or to fall. And one of the Hebrew words that is related to Nun is Nephal. Nephal is a Nun word, and that's where the word Nephilim comes from, or referring to the fallen ones, or the ones, the angels that were fallen from heaven. And absolute papal supremacy. This authority, however, though it has been given to man and is exercised by men, is not human but rather divine, granted to Peter by a divine word and reaffirmed to him, Peter, and his successors by one whom Peter confessed, the Lord saying to Peter himself, "Whatsoever you shall bind on earth shall be bound also in heaven," etc. And Matthew 16:19. "Therefore whoever resists this power thus ordained by God resists the ordinance of God." Romans 13:2. "Furthermore we declare, we proclaim, we define that it is absolutely necessary for salvation that every human creature be subject to the Roman pontiff." That was written 14th century papal bull Unam Sanctam. Ancient rabbinical tradition relates to the 14th letter Nun to the idea of the fallen ones, Nephilim, as discussed in articles relating to Isaiah 14, Romans 14, and Revelation 14, to name a few. This then integrates with the course of church history and the first official declaration of absolute papal supremacy made at the dawn of the 14th century, 1302, by Pope Boniface VIII, quoted above. The supernatural integration with Isaiah 14 simultaneously exposes the spirit motivating mere creatures to claim divine authority while demonstrating the absolute supremacy of one true and sovereign Lord Almighty, who has given us his perfect prophetic word. The fall of Boniface VIII. "Yet thou shalt be brought down to hell, to the sides of the pit. They that see thee shall narrowly look upon thee, and consider thee, saying, Is this the man that made the earth to tremble, and that did shake the kingdoms, that made the world as a wilderness, and destroyed the cities thereof, and that opened not the house for his prisoners. All the kings of the nations, even all of them, lie in glory, every one in his own house. But thou art cast out of thy grave like an abominable branch, and as the raiment of those that are slain, thrust through with a sword, that go down to the stones of the pit, as a carcass trodden under feet. The downfall of the medieval papal power was triggered by monetary conflict between King Philip the Fair of France and Pope Boniface VIII. Philip was heavily taxing the church to build his kingdom, so Boniface issued his bull Clericis Laicos that threatened ipso facto excommunication for anyone taxing the church without papal approval. And as Philip's rebellion against the Pope intensified, Pope Boniface issued his bull Unam Sanctam, claiming both spiritual and temporal authority over all human creatures. Philip responded by publicly accusing the Pope of a host of crimes against God, man, and nature. As Boniface sat in his home in Anagni, preparing another bull that would have excommunicated Philip, he was attacked by a force of hundreds of horsemen and one or 2,000 footmen with the intent of capturing him and setting him before a council in France that would depose him of his power. The Catholic view of that then happened is described by this entry in the Catholic Encyclopedia. Boniface was held 3 days a close prisoner in the plundered papal palace. No one cared to bring him food or drink, while the banditti quarreled over his person as a valuable asset. By early morning of 9 September, the burghers of Anagni had changed their minds, wearied perhaps of the presence of the soldiers, and ashamed that a pope, their townsmen, should perish within their walls at the hands of the hated Francesi. They expelled Nogaret and his band and confided Boniface to the care of the 2 Orsini cardinals who had come from Rome with 400 horsemen. With them he returned to Rome. The holding of Boniface as a close prisoner echoes the words of Isaiah 14:16, "They that see thee shall narrowly look upon thee, and consider thee, saying, Is this the man that made the earth to tremble, that did shake the kingdoms?" The excessive trauma of this whole ordeal brought the 85-year-old pontiff to his knees, and he promptly died of a violent fever less than a month later. Thus were the words of the Lord fulfilled against whosoever exalt himself to the heights of heaven. Indeed, in less than a year after proclaiming the divine power of papacy, the Pope Boniface lay dead in the grave. Note also that there could not be a more accurate description of this Pope than he that did shake the kingdoms. Indeed, the event that led to Unam Sanctam and Boniface's downfall was the result of the papal conflict. Philip, king of the nation of France. Historian Thomas Bokenkotter discusses the rise of the nation states as an integral cause of the decline in papal power in his well-balanced book, A Concise History of the Catholic Church. In his chapter called The Unmaking of Christendom, AD 1300 to 1650, the first sections concerning the opening of the 14th century and called The Decline of the Papal Monarchy integrates perfectly with the symbolic meaning of noon and the fallen ones. Here is an excerpt. The successors of Hildebrand succeeded to a remarkable degree in establishing their supremacy over Christendom. Under these imposing papal monarchs, Christendom enjoyed its golden age in the 13th century, but the onward sweep of history could not be held back, and the rise of national monarchies in the 13th century presaged the decline of both the imperial and papal authority as the end of papal Christendom. Philip the Fair of France led the onslaught of nation-states of papal monarchy when he literally kidnapped Pope Boniface VIII and then constrained Boniface's successor to remain in France. The immediate consequence of all these political machinations was the 70-year Babylonian captivity of the papacy in Avignon, France. Babylonian captivity of the papacy. And it shall come to pass in the day that the Lord shall give thee rest from thy sorrow and from thy fear and from the hard bondage wherein thou wast made to serve, that thou shalt take up this proverb against the king of Babylon and say, How hath the oppressor ceased, the golden city ceased? The Lord hath broken the staff of the wicked and the scepter of the rulers. Isaiah 14:3. In 1305, Pope Clement V, a Frenchman, was elected Pope. He lived in various places in France until 1309, when he moved the papal court to Avignon, France, where the papacy remained until 1378. For 70 years, Rome lay dormant. Indeed, the Golden City had ceased. Precisely as Isaiah 14 declares. This was a major event that came to be known as the Babylonian captivity of the papacy contemporaneously in the 14th century. It also correlates perfectly with the historical Babylonian exile mentioned above in the 14th book, both in terms of the century in which it occurred and its duration was declared in 2 Chronicles 36:20 on spoke 14 of the wheel. And them that had escaped from the sword carried he away to Babylon, where they were servants to him and his sons until the reign of the kingdom of Persia, to fulfill the word of the Lord by the mouth of Jeremiah, until the land had enjoyed her Sabbaths. As long as she lay desolate, she kept the Sabbath to fulfill 70 years. It is extremely significant that the Roman Catholic Church, as part of its apologetic of papal authority derived from Peter, asserts to this day that Rome is symbolically represented as Babylon in the scriptures. 16th century Reformation. This mysterious connection between Babylon and the number 14 manifests in the structure of Matthew's genealogy, where the Babylonian exile is used to punctuate two sets of 14 generations. All of this manifests in the structure of the canon with its correlated set of three triplets that follow spoke 14 of the wheel. So, looking at the table, you see the three epistles, also which are also epistles to the scattered. So the 15th epistle is James, 16th is 1 Peter, and 17th is 2 Peter. And post-exilic minor prophets are Haggai, Zechariah, and Malachi, one after the other. And post-exilic Old Testament history is Ezra, Nehemiah, and Esther.